Bartholomew Town is brought to you in part by the University of Rhode Island Online, Navigant Credit Union, the Audubon Society of Rhode Island, Newport Film, and Half Street Group.
Bartholomew Town.
All right, so here we are. The election's over, which is a nice relief in a way that we don't have to speculate on the outcome, but, you know, we have an outcome.
Yeah.
And I guess the very first question is your initial reaction and the Women Project's initial positioning in light of what we just experienced election-wise.
Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm honored to represent a vast range of folks in Rhode Island who identify as either activists or legislative supporters. I come from the landscape of being an artist first and a designer, and I always came from the thesis that all art is political, and moved to Rhode Island from Los Angeles and had this moment where I was like, oh, like there's a place to do this work. So the Woman Project initially, about a year before the election, was invited into a number of spaces that were really supporting gender diverse youth and trans students. And they were commenting on how they all had to shift their behaviors of their organizations because they went from activists, grassroots, community organizing to service providers because so many young people were killing themselves here in the state.
Yeah.
And we had a track record around abortion access legislation and also legislation that was supporting doctors in the field, really identifying ways that we could be the most dignified in terms of all the ranges of support that we provide here in the state. And the orgs were like, you have a track record doing this on the ground. We need your help. And so we were like, okay, I identify as a white cis woman. I'm a mom of 2 children. One is not a norm identifying child in this culture. And as a result, we said, you know, we would be happy to be, however we can be helpful. I'm going to take away the word ally now because there's a real interesting stigma around it, and I appreciate that. I really appreciate the reevaluation of that word and behavior. But we were like, how can we help? So a number of orgs said, well, first of all, there is a movement afoot by the far right coming into our state and spending a ton of money on organizing at the town and city levels. And they've been building a path of leadership, but they're much more emboldened now. And so what do you think about being part of this movement? And so the Woman Project built a really private, small group of activists from all different types of spaces in our state that we became a sort of watchdog for ourselves, being like, okay, let's watch and learn. Let's become observers like all of us need to be. And we noticed these patterns. And so we started following this one gentleman who, I don't think it's worth saying his name, but one guy who really was emboldened after COVID he definitely got, what do you call it? Like he got moved to
radicalized.
The right. Yeah, radicalized. Yeah. And his sister actually and I have talked a lot, which I hope he hears this, and I hope that makes his blood boil a little bit. But anyway, she told me all about sort of how his world views changed, and he fed off of the attention that he was getting. And so he made his personal mission to go around the state of Rhode Island, visit every school committee, and talk to them during public comment about how they didn't have to follow the Rhode Island Department of Ed's policy that was protecting trans and gender diverse youth from possibly their parents, possibly their foster parents, like whatever, their guardians. And so we started showing up. We typically find in any activist space, you ask yourself the question of, is it worth oxygenizing or giving oxygen to this sort of thing, bringing an attention to this? And what we realized is the community itself in a larger whole needed to see that they were supported, right? There needed to be people who were not in that community being already attacked to stand up and say, we're here for you and we love you. And that was really asked for by so many. And so we started going and we started learning a lot. And that led to us uncovering a lot more work that was being done across the state. And that we started identifying, like the organizer himself, he was just looking for one town that'd be willing to throw out the mandate that each town is required to follow the Department of Ed's policy.
Yes. Yep.
All they needed to do, one of them was say, we're not going to follow this anymore, and it would get kicked up to the Rhode Island Supreme Court. And in the past, at the Rhode Island Supreme Court, something similar has happened around sex education, but because we're the most Catholic state in the nation, the Supreme Court at the time voted to make it so that every town would decide how they would allow that type of education to be taught. So we expect that that is what's coming. This person did identify the weakest spots. He found his towns. He knows which ones are going to give him what he needs. And not really him. When I say him, it's not really him. Think of him identifying really for like 250 other humans.
Yeah.
And but they, for a while, had played the long game, like everything in America. And they were already moving a bunch of people to run for school committee and town council. And they flipped. They flipped from mixed school committees of reps, of Republicans and Democrats and independents to fully Republican. Mm-hmm. And so oftentimes we were doing an educational program called the Empower to Advocate series, and it was supposed to be like, how do you make space for all of us to do this work? Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, there's room for all of it. And that's really kind of going back to my roots as an artist. Like, there is ways to subversively do things. There are very non-subversive ways as well. But and art often brings people together in ways that are different than what stereotypes are. So we were building a path of education. We were building a path of activists showing up with us at each one of these towns as we followed this quote unquote tour of hate.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, sad to say, none of us were surprised that this person won. Mm-hmm. And so what it's meant, though, as we got closer and closer to the election, we asked ourselves, what could we do to be most helpful to just anyone in Rhode Island? And we don't ever have that question. I can't afford to do a giant focus group. That's right. But what we were learning as we were going for a year of moving around the state is that time and time again, people were telling us along the way in different towns that you would never guess, that they were like, hey, activists are here to support this community. Like, activists, we are here. Like, we are not a town that doesn't have parents and friends and family who want to see their children thrive in whatever identity they want to hold. But then we also saw, in the same vein, people would say to us, I have no idea who to vote for. Can you tell me who? Like, this is how I feel.
At the school committee level,
school committee
or town
level,
council,
town council, mayor, solicitor, what have you. People were just like, I feel this way and I don't frickin' know. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And so our team kind of was like, okay, if it's helpful, why not use our energy and our strength of employment to put time towards analyzing and reporting on who the humans are here that are running for elected office, and do they represent the values of their constituents? So believe it or not, it started off as a very nonpartisan action. It was like, do you believe in bodily freedom? Yes or no? And that's all it was. Like, it was like, do you, candidate X, believe in this? So for folks who don't know Rhode Island, or for folks who do know Rhode Island, you may shake your head, yes, you agree, but we are still very heavily situated in like mob-like tendencies here. We have a lot of deep relationships that are interconnected in sort of quote unquote like organized crime like ways, but we also have done really well to subvert systems through not answering questions, not being public about our identities, not saying what we really believe in. And so, like so many other groups in every state across the country, there are always questionnaires that go out, and it's like, oh, how do you feel about gun safety? Or how do you feel about pets? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, and so just like ourselves and those other groups, there were tons of people who didn't really want to answer, but we did what some people don't do because they don't have the bandwidth time. And that is, we followed the models in which when someone's going on to a jury, they get a lot of background check work done. And so we went through Facebook accounts, we went through testimony writing, we went through op-eds, we went through any discourse where people might be talking, and we were able to evaluate from a scientific and, believe it or not, anthropological systematized way. So as a result of that, we garnered a lot more data, and we went to the candidates themselves and said, how do you feel about this? This is what we found. Like, people were like, whoa, what?
Confronting people with their own words
yeah, and it was
or
just like,
positions.
This is what you were. We had the data. It's very black and white. Do you agree? We're going to put it out there because we believe, a healthy government is a transparent government. So a lot of people didn't respond still. We still can find a lot of things. We learned some fascinating things along the way. Like in Rhode Island, people believe you can have a only friends and family Facebook account, and that means that can act as your campaign website.
Right.
And so folks would be like, why did you not know that I was for this issue? My parents are furious that this is what's being said about us. And we were like, well, how are you making this information known to just anyone? So people got to learn along the way. Like we were not ill-spirited about it. We were like, here, let us help you use language to describe these issues that you may not feel comfortable with, but they are what people are looking for. So we built what we call the Bodily Freedom Forever Index, and the index became a tool that was it was a report on if someone was for or against it. Still, a ton of people in the report never had an answer, and it was too obscure to be able to answer on, to be fair. But we were only doing it for people who were running for office this year, and we went from school committee, town council, all the way up to our federal delegation. And so now my team of awesome activists / researchers, data miners, are now going in and asking the question of like, okay, maybe you weren't running, but where do you stand on these issues now? So there may be people that are about to run that we're going to start doing that data so that we're going to try and build the full picture of this kind of scenario. So for any town and all that stuff. So it's a different method of the way we work. People knew us as like loud and spectacle based and really in your presence, like activism, not confrontational per se, but really in your face. And so we kind of stepped back and we said, how do we do it differently to respond to the time we are in? And that set the stage for where we have to go now. And I think for so many activists, and I would say to anyone in any side of issues, I think that we are in a time where if you are not comfortable having your name and face and home address shared on the internet anymore, you need to become more hidden. You need to use hats and sunglasses and bandanas or masks like during COVID. You need to take away identifying markings on your body, whether it be if you have tattoos, wear gloves. If you have jewelry, take them off. For me, I have a ton of hair. And so sometimes people are like, oh, I didn't know you were here. I didn't see your hair. I'm like, great. That was easy. But I mean, some people may go so far as to wear wigs. So I think that we're in a time where don't take for granted what it means to be in this media culture that we are in, and don't take for granted the intentions behind algorithms and the behaviors of systems to out people. And I think that it's not like it was a couple months ago.
No.
Bartholomew Town.
Birds are disappearing from our landscape at a rapid pace. Over 1/3 of those breeding on Audubon Society of Rhode Island's wildlife refuges are in decline. Climate change has taken a toll on their migration, nesting, and food sources. While science is highlighting the problem, Audubon is working on real solutions with a plan to rapidly reduce their carbon emissions. The organization will be free of fossil fuels by 2030, with renewable energy powering Audubon's buildings, equipment, and vehicles. To shape our future, all of us must act. Learn more about repowering Audubon, their avian research, and how you can join their fight for climate resiliency. Visit asri.org/repower. Newport Film screens the latest, critically acclaimed documentary films year-round across Rhode Island. Like a film festival, Newport Film often gets early access to films before they're available online or in the theaters. Stay up to date on their latest screening events at newportfilm.com or on Instagram @NewportFilm. Are you looking to advance in your career or explore a new field? The University of Rhode Island now offers a comprehensive portfolio of fully online programs designed to bring world-class education to you anytime, anytime, anywhere. Choose from a wide range of flexible, asynchronous programs in business and leadership, data, tech and STEM, healthcare and pharmacy, marine and environmental science, and more. With expert faculty and innovative courses, you'll gain the skills and knowledge to thrive in today's competitive world. Are you ready to take the next step? Visit uri.edu/online and discover how URI Online can help you achieve your goals. URI Online, learn anywhere with us. Half Street Group brings a new generation's perspective to leadership communication, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience message and culture and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. Join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. Today, Navigant is a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. That's the most important thing for people to realize. A lot of people have also been digging into this moment from a very global or, I guess, national picture, and that's important to do. And even from an historic, I know a lot of people are reading like On Tyranny and sort of these basic, these books. I have a copy right here, and I've been thinking through it, and all of that's true, and that's happening. Like to one extent or another. To what extent it actually gets to, who knows? There's no point in predicting it. It's not a scientific, predictable situation. But you can imagine things going off the rails. But one thing that's for sure is, and we were talking about this offline before we started, locally, one, there's a lot more power for an individual. Two, there's a lot more concern, because you are susceptible to unchecked, sometimes unhinged individuals who think they're doing the right thing. They think they're defending America or something, or the Bible or whatever it is that they're just like this individual that you're referencing who's been going around from school committee to school committee, a guy who thinks he has newsmaker status, that thinks he has standing in the community at some level, where in fact it's really just one guy with, like you say, an audience of 250, but and he was dangerous. He would call school committees beforehand, and he did damage along the way. So by being an ill-intended personality, by being a bit of a bully, there were certain school districts that didn't know how to handle him, and so they changed the methods in which they were going to allow public comment. So some said, you can't speak here unless you sign up 48 hours before, as a community member who maybe is coming just to talk about a building build out that's being drafted. And so people in the community were like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening? There were such fascinating stories for each town. Everyone's different, right? 38 towns in Rhode Island. We all have our own personalities. So I think that there are moments where awesome stories of activists who formed along the way, who built their confidence because they saw just sort of the damage and they saw just the sadness of what was in front of them. There's one person who started off in their town and was really rattled, really shook, and they are non-binary. And they started coming along with us because they knew we would be there. And so they're like, okay, you're a steady, you're someone I can learn among, you have tools to take along to build from. And by the end of it, they were going into rooms where they were the only person on the issue of defending these young people, where everyone in the room was saying just horrific, disparaging things about their own
identity, not even knowing them.
Yeah.
And this person goes in and is just like, let me tell you about my transition. Let me tell you what it's like to do this. Let me tell you what it's like to be a human in America right now. And like everything, so many orgs across the country who are having these kind of conversations, whether it be about abortion access and contraception care, whether it be about trans protections and gender diverse youth having just the right to be who they want to be. Everyone is saying it's all about storytelling and it's all about the individual stories. And I have to say, like, I appreciate that methodology, but that is frightening to those folks. As an activist who's been in the abortion space for so long, it is hard to tell your story about how you've been treated poorly or discriminated against or not seen as a full human. And I think that we're putting a lot of pressure on people to step forward. I respect that a lot of Black activist females or female identifying folks are right now saying it's time for us to take a step back. It's time for us to reflect on what has been happening, and how we're going to move forward.
Right.
And so I think for anyone listening to this, I think this is a call to say this is not a moment where we should be relying on the people who are being put in places of marginalization or places of less than full identifying spaces, but more important that we, as friends and family, kind of come around and show them that we care about them and want to be there for them.
Yes.
And so it's hard and it's scary even for me. Like there's pictures of my house at home online. I have young people that I take care of. And so we ask the questions of ourselves of like, how far are any of us willing to go in this work? Recently, someone said to me, they're like, so how are you going to know when what you do is no longer safe anymore? Like, when are you going to know when to stop? And I don't. And, but I do take comfort in being able to say that I have built, I don't like to use like war words, but I've built an army of friends who are very thoughtful and very mindful of watching chat rooms of far right hate groups or being in spaces where they are not known to be there as a spy, or doing the work where they're talking to people on my behalf or anyone's behalf that I have interest in the work myself. And it's information sharing. Yeah. And so I think, as you and I were also talking about before this, like, what does the future of activism look like? And none of us believe it's what it used to be. And so I think that in a world where we are questioning safety and we're questioning identity, outliners, I think one of those things might be, how do you build a space that you're being as careful as you can at relaying information?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because I think there's so much of this that is an educational piece. And oftentimes there's two challenges. One is, of course, the person who is experiencing the boot on their chin is also the person who is either tapped or has to step forward to say, well, wait a minute, here's why I shouldn't be treated, in a subhuman manner. Like that exactly what you said. And that's extremely unfair and also potentially dangerous right now. But I also think there's a lot of people that have just been duped. And unduping them. What does that look like? That's something that I always think about in broadcast, in radio, TV, places like this. So, hey, TV producers in Rhode Island, mainstream TV producers, enough of this nonsense. Tell the stories the way that they need to be told, not for an activist agenda, but to get the truth out to as many people as possible. Because the distortion of reality by local media is, one, laughable, but also dangerous. And I think that there's a real need right now, more than ever, for, okay, yeah, this guy shows up at a school committee meeting. It's not well, he might be right. Here's his take on why he doesn't want schools to allow for privacy amongst a student that may be considering transitioning or something. It's not about just offering the quote unquote other side. It's about saying, hey, this guy is here he's on a tour of hate. Mm-hmm. Because that's what it is.
It was also interesting because as we went really quickly, we started hearing from young people themselves, and they're like, what is his problem with what's in our pants? And it was a great question. I was like, oh, thank you for changing the narrative completely, right? And that was really eye-opening at first, because we were sitting in the audience and you're watching young people listen to him and then them going up and speaking, and you were like, wow. And I mean, I would recommend anyone interested. There are really great Steve Alquist's Substack. He and the Woman Project worked together to make sure we were always in support of each other, that no one was left alone to be doing this kind of reporting. We were doing it behind the scenes, whereas he was really front and center. But he did a great job of reporting who was speaking and what their testimony was. He never covered the far right side of it. Mm-hmm. He really stuck with the positive and the supportive side.
Yeah.
While acknowledging the hate was there. But, you know, I would say... I'm sad that the media has felt like it has to maintain this idea of one side versus the other. So there was a mainstream newspaper that came to the event in Cranston, and they take a picture of a bunch of the activists out front that are holding signs at the library. Yeah. But they also then interview a few of the people on the other side of the
Canadian
story.
Guy they brought in that was the speaker. Yeah, exactly.
And a number of people asked the question, like, what was it for the paper in that moment that they felt like they needed to do that? Like, why did they need to tell the story of it? And I get it. If you're talking about it just from a sales side, because papers are struggling, they need to make sure they have all of their possible clients satisfied. Mm-hmm. They need to tell like a conflicting story. However, I do wonder if there's a value there where the reporters are asking themselves, like, are we verging in non-truth telling, and is that, okay.
Yeah.
So
I think so. I think a lot of the reporters probably asked that question, maybe even the editors. I think the corporatization of media is just like anything, like water and you name it. It's we have to get to a point where we're able to organize and convey messaging without relying on corporations, because by design the corporation wants to stop you. I've been studying Occupy Wall Street a lot. Yes. And something that didn't strike me at the time, because I was so unplugged from traditional media, didn't have a TV. I would listen to news radio, but I didn't have a TV, pre-podcast, really non-MySpace social.
Totally.
And I had no idea really what was happening. But in the last couple of weeks, I've been studying and watching how CNN, their portrayal of Occupy Wall Street. Whoa, ho, 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 here they are. These kids are out there. They're, oh, ha, ha, ha. Conan O'Brien sends out a Triumph, the comic dog, to make a joke of it. Saturday Night Live portrays Occupy Wall Street as a bunch of, burnouts that, just idiots. This is all corporate efforts to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to protect our interests. And so we need to demean and diminish the impact of this valid movement that, yes, admittedly, I was in New York at the time. It did turn into like the second and third waves were more like, all right, let's just hang out. Groups, exactly. But totally. The core message was completely valid and essential. And it may actually be why we saw Bernie Sanders and Trump gain the types of momentum that they've gained just in terms of messaging, economic populism. Mm-hmm. The reality is that that's not what Trump represents at all. And Bernie sort of represents it, but he still, unfortunately, has to be tied into some level of corporate positions just by virtue of aligning with the Democrats in the Senate. But the point is to say media, even comedy media, where they probably weren't like given instructions like, okay, we need to SNL, we need to demean Occupy Wall Street, do a bunch of skits that make them look foolish. That instruction didn't even necessarily come down. I think the framework for the condition that they operate in was already there, as if to say, hey, well, we need to protect corporate interests because that's where this great corporation, NBC or General Electric or whatever it was at the time, they pay for us to do this show. We can't have people bashing corporate interests or we're out of work.
Yeah.
That happens at the local level, too. I always have to check myself on that. I think all reporters that have any affiliation with corporations have to. And it creates a lane that is maybe not what the same reporter would report if they were completely independent. And that's why Steve Alquist is able to do what he does, because he answers to nobody except for his readers.
And I'll use that as a pivot to say that has been the strength of our organization as well, is that we haven't had a national entity saying, okay, we're all on messaging here, we're all going to do this at the same time. Granted, we work with organizations that we are in collaboration with, and they'll say, oh, let's do a mass X and we'll all X together. But I would say that, that has its challenges. But I would say that oftentimes something that I get from folks is, the way that we act, people are like, oh, it's so uncomfortable, or the Occupy Wall Street behaviors of calling attention. You still have to see that when you do things, you're getting attention of the media. The media is paying attention because it's like, you're out here, you're making a statement, and we want to cover it because even if it's demeaning, the coverage is still very helpful. And I come back to my background I was in Los Angeles and I was studying sculpture and spectacle and looking at how you continue to attract attention by doing things that are, I guess, shock and awe, but more importantly are causing people to think. And we don't have a lot of time with that also with the way the media is, right? So, not long ago, statistically, I was reading that the average number of things that we see in a day is somewhere around 120,000 visuals. Our brain sees that much data, right? Pictures, words, stories. And so what can you do that allows something to sink in and stick and not just be like a passing, fleeting visual? And so I think that that's where we've really tried to do something different. I think that that's where sometimes when you have an encampment and that encampment sticks with it while they're getting demeaned or while they're cold or while they're getting even being told that whatever they're doing is going to have no fodder. There's no place it could go or what it could be done. The sticking with it and the longevity of the work is really the work. It's being a persistent, consistent pressure. And the sculptor in me has this really fun, visual lecture that I've given before where you're looking at power structures and how they exist based on a pyramid of rice with a drip of rice coming down on it. And you can look at how the rice bounces off or how the rice falls off slightly to the sides or how it'll stick. Yeah. And there's science that talks about how the rice behaves on this pyramid. And if you're looking at it as the metaphor for the power structure, the patriarchy, you ask yourself, well, what's going to ever change that shape? What can you do to shift power? And that's going to be a harder question now with this administration.
Yeah. Fundamentally, it's going to be a much harder question to answer, and they're going to do everything they can to make it so that question isn't even asked.
So I would say to folks, if you're listening, if you're going, okay, well then what can I do? Mm-hmm. There really are real things. We are not at a loss. We are not in danger yet. We are not seeing examples of suppression in the way that a lot of predictions exist. And so first I would say, we have to live in the moment, right? And I think that that's a hard feeling to do or to say, especially if we feel like we are a marginalized community. But for those who feel like they can take that risk or that they feel comfortable enough, we still have to do what we're here to do. We're here to speak out and say, this is not okay. I think that for anyone in a state who feels comfortable, any town or state, you should on your phone save into your phone book your phone number of your local town representative or your local senator. You should have on your email how to get in touch with your town councilors or school committee members. Those people in our towns, I think it's important to say, it's kind of like family, right? It's kind of like going to an uncomfortable family meal. And you sit with these people, you see them at the grocery store, you see them possibly when you're walking out on the street. And so to talk to those people publicly about public issues makes people feel prickly and it's not great. But what you do have, and I don't think a lot of people think about it, is that you have the ability to make a greater impact because it's a smaller pool. But we should all prepare to be talking to all these folks a lot more. And in any state in the country, some more than others, we should have these people on speed dial because we need to be able to say, hey, Project 2025 is rolling out. We know that there are going to be these kind of restrictions. How is it affecting us right now in the decision that you're voting on today about food stamps? Like, how much money are we losing to the food stamp system? And so I think that the people at the state level making legislative decisions, the people at the town levels, they all need to know we're watching them. And the best way to do that is by just reaching out to be a human to them. And they're human too. They're not made out of metal. You can stick. Like, things that you say can impact. And, mean-spirited things do stick. But also in our line of work, really wonderful words have stuck too. Like, comments to people of like, thank you so much for defending the Rhode Island Department of Ed's child protection policy. Thank you for maintaining that. We would have activists show up in every town and just stand up. I'd have people say, I'm really uncomfortable talking, but I really want to. Can you tell me what to say? And I'm like, well, the gist of what you want to say is just thank you for doing your job. Yeah. And I was like, that's a strange thing to say, but that's what we're trying to defend. And so people are like, oh, that's all I have to do? And it's like, yeah. So like, practice. Like, it's kind of like going and singing in a church choir. Like, you're standing up with a group, but you're having a solo for a few seconds. And so I will say to folks that that's going to be like, that's kind of like a new norm that we kind of have to build into our culture. And I think also I would ask anyone and everyone to find like a community group that they want to be a part of, because we kind of have to get back to being amongst people. We need to move away from being on screens, and we need to go back to being in spaces, because we here in Rhode Island are such a small population of humans that we inevitably know someone who knows someone. We have the power to communicate far beyond our small groups by being in those groups. So I would encourage everybody to just make interpersonal connections. The parasocial lane
is not enough in this moment. And it's also, there's a nurturing component to that as well. That's really important.
And then also, so then my personal pitch for how we work and what we do is that people have turned to us when they've wanted to have like a big explosive behavior, or they want to see legislation passed around reproductive rights or LGBTQ protections, where we're supporting other groups that really are leading. And what I'd say to folks is like, hey, join my email list. Like, check out what we do. Honestly, more importantly, stay on my Instagram. Like, just watch there. Watch there. But
which hopefully won't get hacked a second time.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, it was a great moment. And groups like ours thrive on just who's involved. And it's going to be, I am going to lean in hard on the power of the people part of it. And we won't do the big spectacle blow-ups the same way that you all have seen us do
projections,
before. We will probably still project, but we're going to teach a ton more people how to project. We're going to make our tools a lot more available to a lot more humans, so that folks understand that they have the power in their hands too. It's not just got to be like a little rebel rouser group like us. And honestly, like, I often try to encourage anyone where you feel like you're either sharing information of a group that really helps them, you're signing up for their email, or you're giving $5. It really doesn't have to be a lot. People are always like, oh no, if I give money, that means they're going to always come back for more. I hate to say it, but most of us nonprofits aren't so good at remembering who's given us the money. We have you on a great list, and we're like, oh, one day we'll get back to you and say thank you, and we'll send you a piece of art as a thank you, but we're not so good about coming back to be like, how about more? But I think that we're all going to need to kind of join forces. There are a lot of not-for-profits right now that are setting up groups that are like, okay, let's become like local activist-based groups. And I think that all those groups are going to need to congeal and find each other a little bit faster, like magnets.
Yes.
And figure out how to work better. So that's the work right now.
I couldn't agree more with that last statement. I think that's fundamental to where we need to go. It's activist groups. Clusters is what I've been thinking of. Clusters of artists, clusters of activists, clusters of people who have some impulse right now to move the world in a different direction. Find each other and embrace the collective moment, because it's really it is going to get real. Again, is it like you're going to wake up on January 21st and some F-16s are going to fly over Rhode Island or something like that. No, I mean, we're probably not going to see that. I think some of the portrayals of what it looks like might be more Hollywood, but you're going to see it in the erosion of rights and the standing up of people like this school committee person, the tour of hate. Yeah. He will now be considered. It reminds me of back in, last thing I'll say is like in middle school or something like that. I tried to play sports. I mean, I'm somewhat athletic. I'm not like a complete klutz, but or putz, but like
I get it.
I was not like a star athlete.
Yeah.
And I remember in gym class, when the star athlete threw a dodgeball, we were playing dodgeball, and threw it into my face.
No.
And the gym teacher, a guy named Bill Bartholomew, applauded. He was like, "That's it. That's how you be. That's how a man should be." And he's like, "You got to, basically, I was wrong." This kid who ended up being like, not even, I don't even know if he graduated high school. He definitely didn't become a star basketball player for college basketball. But the projection was, oh, he's a star athlete or whatever. And I always think about Trump world. I always think about this unnamed school committee guy. I always think about these types of people. Like, that's who they are. Yeah. And actually, based on Facebook evaluation, that is actually their political beliefs.
Yeah.
They are now once again empowered, as if to say, hey, we're right. Like this sort of brain dead machoism, hate driven, exclusive white male, some sort of attachment to religion, whatever it is. That's now being stood up as, hey, you're right. Over here, Bartholomew, over here, people like that, they're wrong, they're weird, they're this, they're weak, they're meek, right. They're this, they're that.
Yeah.
And so I now accept we're back in that reality, and we're going to see that on a community basis where even people in my own day-to-day life that I work alongside, I know that they now feel like they've got control of the situation, and I've lost, and their boot is now back on my chin. This is me. I'm a white male as well, and so I also am willing to be out there and take more heat than other people who are less privileged.
Yeah.
But that's the reality we're in, and we have to accept it, because otherwise we're just going to get run over.
Well, you should join me along my path.
I'm in.
I'm starting to call it the 38 Club. So we're all going to be in the 38 Senate districts, and we're going to all have our groups based on who we are in each community. You can sign up and join the list, folks, if you want to. It's bit.ly / capital B, capital F, dash, capital TOUR. So BFF Tour, Bodily Freedom Forever Tour. And we're going to sign up. I'll have it on our Instagram account, so take a look at it. But we're meeting people in different areas. We're connecting. And then the best part is we're going to find those different epicenters. So if you have a group that you're like, hey, we think we want to do it, like the Embroidery Club of Bristol. They want to get involved. I'm like, all right, Embroidery Club, let's do this, right? And so there's so many different nooks and crannies. Rhode Island has like the third most not-for-profits per capita in America, which is insane considering how small we are. But we have so many great little meetup groups, and I think that it's time, like we said, to kind of build the tour ourselves, make our own like tour of of support, and find a way to get connected, so we know that there are other folks doing the work too. And and so I look forward. I mean, for me, and I think probably for you, I would guess, is that my bucket gets filled based on the human interactions, and it gets and it's the hopefulness in meeting folks along the way and hearing how they're doing it and how they're taking care of themselves and their community. And I think we have so much to learn from each other.
100% agree. Jocelyn Foye, the Women Project. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having us, and myself as well.
Of course.
Thanks.
Hey, Bill Bartholomew here. I got a great education at the University of Rhode Island. It's something that I use every day in all of my work. And now the University of Rhode Island, if you haven't heard, they're offering a wide array of programs online. That's right, URI Online. Check it out at uri.edu/online, or give them a call, 401-874-5280. I can't thank the University of Rhode Island enough for the outstanding education that they provided me. They're one of the best universities in the Northeast, public or otherwise. Give them a call, 401-874-5280. That's 401-874-5280, and learn about the University of Rhode Island online. You want to talk about longevity? Take a look at Navigant Credit Union. As Rhode Island's first ever member-owned credit union, Navigant Credit Union has been a staple in the local business community for more than 108 years. That's right. Today, Navigant's a $3.4 billion institution serving more than 136,000 members across 25 physical branch locations. But since its founding in 1915, the mission has never changed. Navigant Credit Union's team of financial professionals have remained committed to improving the financial well-being of the families, businesses, and communities they serve across Rhode Island. Learn more at navigantcu.org. Our news desert is getting bigger and drier. Poignant words from Wayne Cabot as he was signing off WCBS New York for the final time. The news radio icon going off the air. And hey, we try to do our part every day here at Bartholomew Town, ripodcast.com. And part of our sustainability depends on our listeners. And if you would like to support the independent journalism that we produce, visit patreon.com/Bartholomew Town, or just click the support link wherever you're listening. Let me tell you about my friends at Half Street Group. They bring a new generation's perspective to leadership communications, strategic public relations, and digital marketing. Half Street helps organizations and leaders take control of their own stories and manage their reputations. They get results for their clients by focusing on audience, message, and culture, and by leveraging their decade-long relationship with media and opinion leaders in the Ocean State and throughout New England. And you can join me and Half Street Group founder and president Mike Rea for a conversation every month about news of the day, the hottest media analysis, and a look behind the scenes at how impactful leaders drive conversations. Learn more at halfstreetgroup.com. Hey, thanks for stopping by Bartholomew Town. For more content, follow me on Instagram at Bill Bartholomew.